Chapter 1263. Duke Masalan was very tough in front of Faye and could even be considered arrogant, but he was only a front-line commander in the end, so he couldn't completely represent the Malar Empire. Compared to Duke Masalan, the Malar Empire's official attitude was much more tactful. But no matter how tactful it was, the Malar Empire's attitude was very clear. They definitely wouldn't agree to the ceasefire agreement proposed by the New Flyer. Or to be more specific, they definitely wouldn't accept the terms of the ceasefire agreement proposed by the New Flyer. To the Malar Empire, they clearly had the absolute advantage, and as long as they kept this up, they would be able to defeat the Lampari kingdom sooner or later. They would be able to destroy the Lampari kingdom and become the only powerful empire in the signs, ruling over all the signs. In this situation, it was no different from a joke to have them choose to stop the war this easily. The situation was indeed going in the direction that the Malar Empire wanted to see. While they were negotiating with the New Flyer, the Malar Empire didn't stop their actions at all and continued to strengthen their attacks on the Lampari kingdom. And there was a very serious turmoil in the Lampari kingdom at this time. In the territory of the Antilla kingdom, there was an army called the Antilla Restoration Army that suddenly appeared, attacking the Lampari kingdom's army stationed in the Antilla kingdom. This was sudden and adding in the fact that the Lampari kingdom didn't have that many soldiers stationed in the Antilla kingdom. They were almost completely wiped out by the Antilla Restoration Army. At the same time, in the territory of the Sac kingdom, there was an army that was led by the Sac kingdom's king, attacking all over the territory of the Sac kingdom. Adding in the fact that there was a guerrilla army that had been secretly receiving help from the Malar Empire that suddenly increased their attacks. The Lampari kingdom instantly fell into chaos. In this situation, the Lampari kingdom's frontline army was greatly affected, so they kept losing to the Malar Empire's army. They kept retreating and actually sent back all the territory that belonged to the Kamla Empire that they had conquered with great difficulty. Seeing that the Malar Empire was about to take another step and invade the Lampari kingdom, the people of the signs were filled with doubt. What was the New Flyer doing? It had been half a year since the first peace talks between the Lampari kingdom and the Malar Empire that New Flyer had failed. In this long time, the Frestek Chamber of Commerce had only verbally called for both sides to stop fighting, but they never made any substantial moves. This made many people doubtful. Could it be that the news from before was true? The New Flyer really wasn't strong enough and didn't have the courage to fight, not to mention declaring war on the Malar Empire. Almost no one was willing to believe that this was the truth. The New Flyer had been established for over 50 years, and other than the weak years in the beginning, in the remaining 40 years, the New Flyer had always been very strong, while also representing its incomparably strong strength. It had to be known that 20 years ago, even the two empires working together couldn't defeat the New Flyer. But now, the New Flyer actually didn't dare interfere in the war between the Malar Empire and the Lampari kingdom. If the Malar Empire really invaded the Lampari kingdom and even destroyed the Lampari kingdom, then the almost invincible image that the New Flyer had created in the signs over the past few decades would collapse in an instant. And the invincible image of the New Flyer would be broken. It would completely lose its previous transcendent status in the signs and would be reduced to an ordinary chamber of commerce. And if the Malar Empire destroyed the Lampari kingdom and unified the signs, it would certainly not give the New Flyer any room to survive. Even if the New Flyer had already laid a solid foundation in the Demon Cloud continent, if it lost the signs, how could the New Flyer be as strong as before? Perhaps the Malar Empire would accumulate strength and directly invade the Demon Cloud continent. After such an analysis, people were shocked to find that not only the Lampari kingdom, but even the New Flyer had reached a moment of life and death. If the New Flyer just sat back and watched the situation in the Lampari kingdom deteriorate, then the outcome could be imagined. And if they wanted to make a move, was the New Flyer's current strength enough? Under the doubts of countless people, the New Flyer finally made a move. They didn't make a move, but once they made a move, it was like a thunderbolt. April 3834 of the Continental Calendar, the New Flyer publicly announced that since the Malar Empire resolutely refused to agree to a truce, the New Flyer, in order to maintain the peace of the signs and prevent more civilians from being harmed, decided to take more drastic actions to urge the Malur Empire to choose a truce. As for these drastic actions, in April 3834 of the Continental Calendar, 2 fleets of a new flyer invaded the northern ports of the Malur Empire from the northern seas. In half a month, they took control of 3 northern port cities of the Malur Empire and worked with the other 2 fleets of the new flyer, completely sealing off the northern ports of the Malur Empire. The northern Malur Empire fleet fought with the new flyer fleet and was completely wiped out, with not a single ship surviving. At the same time, the new flyer's guards had a total of 3,000 magic tanks and 500 magic airships, with a total of 20,000 soldiers. They headed north from the Black Rice Wasteland, and in just a week, they had completely quelled the chaos in the Sac Kingdom and the Antilla Kingdom. Then they turned northeast and entered the Malur Empire from the small northeastern Antilla Kingdom, the Rodden Duchy. In May 3834 of the Continental Calendar, the new flyer's guards had a fierce battle with the Malur Empire's western garrison. In just a single day, the new flyer's guards had broken through the Malur Empire's defenses and entered the heart of the Malur Empire. At the end of June 3834 of the Continental Calendar, the new flyer's guards had fought 27 large and small battles with the Malur Empire's army, but they hadn't lost a single one. They had defeated 17 Malur Empire's garrison and 3 royal guards, while suffering less than a tenth of their casualties. They had successfully entered Duke Southgate's territory. Duke Southgate announced that he would leave the Malur Empire and give himself the title of Duke Southgate, establishing the Southgate Duchy. At the same time, in the Malur Empire's territory that had been conquered by the new flyer, there were nobles who rebelled. For a while, there were several large and small duchies that were established. On the other side, the Lampari Kingdom's army worked with the 30,000 new flyers' guards to defeat the Malur Empire's army on the battlefield. They drove the Malur Empire's army back from the Kamla Empire's territory. This time, the Lampari Kingdom and the new flyers' army didn't just stop at the Malur Empire's border. They directly invaded the Malur Empire's territory. At the same time, in the far east of the continent, on another battlefield, the 10,000 new flyers' guards and the 50,000 soldiers sent by the Levin continent landed on the east coast of Signs, working with the Nozdorma Business Union Kingdom to easily defeat the Eastern Country's army. In just a month, the Eastern Country's army was defeated and the alliance was disbanded. The Eastern countries all chose to sign the Armistice and Cooperation Agreement with the Nozdorma Business Union Kingdom, ending the war that had lasted several years in the east of Signs. Continent Calendar Year 3835 February, the Lampari Kingdom, the Kingdom of Ruhr, the Drake Duchy, the Nozdorma Business Union Kingdom, the Kandra Federation, and the New Flyers Guards formed an alliance and attacked the Malur Empire again. Under the strong pressure of the alliance, the Malur Empire's emperor made a speech to the outside world. He said that even if they had to die together, they wouldn't allow their country to fall into the hands of the enemy, intending to use the power of the entire country to resist the alliance. Continent Calendar Year 3835 April, the alliance and the Malur Empire began a large battle. In the end, the Malur Empire's side lost 130,000 soldiers. At the end of Continent Calendar Year 3835 April, the New Flyers' super long-range magic missiles with 2 powerful magic nuclear warheads accurately hit the 2 military bases of the Malur Empire in the north, destroying the Malur Empire's final hope of resistance. Continent Calendar Year 3835 June. After discussing it, the alliance officially accepted the Malur Empire's unconditional surrender. Continent Calendar Year 3836 March. The Malur Empire's emperor announced his abdication, and the Malur Empire was reformed. The various provinces of the empire formed the new Marlow Federal Republic, eliminating the imperial system. The first chairman of the Marlow Federal Republic was Duke Southgate. Like this, the war that had plagued the Signs for over 20 years had finally come to an end. ####, in the blink of an eye, another 20 years passed. The Signs had enjoyed another 20 years of peace, and the entire Signs planet had developed in peace for another 20 years. In these 20 years, the magic technology of this world had leaped forward again. In the civilian sector, various kinds of magic machines have been popularized, and people's lives were much more convenient and comfortable compared to 20 years ago. Among them, the most obvious and far-reaching change was the popularization of the Magic Communication Network. The current Magic Communication Network wasn't like 20 years ago, where it only transmitted sound and images. Rather, any kind of information could be transmitted through the Magic Communication Network. People could even enter the Magic Communication Network at any time and interact with other people on the same network. With the appearance of this network, everyone on the Signs planet had become one, almost becoming one. Another large change was the change in transportation methods. The magic airship had already been popularized, and there were even many rich families who could afford small magic airships for their personal use. In terms of public transportation, although faster cars, magic airships, and boats kept coming out, they were no longer the main form of transportation. The transport array that the Shinfei Guild had popularized 20 years ago had already replaced all forms of transportation. Using the transport array, people could even instantly go from Signs to the Demon Cloud continent, crossing over 10,000 kilometers. Because of the appearance of this method of transportation, people didn't even have the concept of distance anymore. No matter where you lived, as long as you wanted to see another person, you could contact them through the Magic Communication Network and use the transport array. At most, you would only need to take a short magic bus and walk 2 steps to reach your destination. If it wasn't for the new flyers strictly controlling the private transport arrays, perhaps those rich and powerful people would have set up a transport array in their homes, connecting to the transport network to make it easier to travel. But even so, large families were qualified to buy small magic airships for their personal use, which was much more convenient than normal people. This kind of convenient transportation method made people feel like the planet under their feet had become smaller, so they all turned to look at the endless starry sky. Under the lead of the new flyer, even if the transport array allowed people to directly go from Signs to Alice and Teta's, or even to planets further away, or even to star systems further away, all the countries were still focused on developing the space industry. Because it was like Sue had said before, although the transport array could instantly send you from Signs to the Demon Cloud continent, if you wanted to reach your destination, you had to walk a certain distance yourself. It was the same for traveling through space. Even if the transport array could send you to another planet that had already been explored, if you needed to do something in space, the transport array couldn't do anything, and you had to fly there yourself. With the lead of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, outside the Signs planet, there were countless satellites and space bases. The newly developed spaceship could even achieve hyperspace travel in the true sense because of the new research breakthrough in teleportation magic. The last successful experiment was the new Flyer's Explorer spaceship. Through hyperspace, it actually flew out of the star system the Signs planet was in. Regarding the success of this experiment, the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce's chief Avita said that as long as the new flyers solved the problem of the star system's coordinates, they would be able to truly travel through space. No one doubted the new flyer. Everyone was looking forward to what Sue had said before, the true era of space travel. ####. Sue stood in the starry sky transfer array above Alice, and he was actually a bit nervous. Speaking of this, it was a bit funny. Even if he was the previous chairman of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce and the person with the most prestige in the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, this was his first time experiencing the interstellar travel that countless researchers and normal people had experienced. Even this time, Steele and the others strongly opposed it, saying that they didn't want him to take this risk. If it wasn't for him losing his temper, they wouldn't have been able to go through this trip. "Sir Chairman, are you prepared to return it?" A new flyer employee nervously asked Sue. "All right, let's begin." The employee nodded, but his head was covered in sweat. He forcefully wiped it before pressing the button to activate the transport array. Suyi's eyes went dark and bright, but he found that the scene in front of him didn't change that much. However, a voice beside him reminded him that he was no longer on Alice. "Sir Chairman, how does it feel to leave Alice for the first time?" Lucian asked with a smile. He turned to look at him and said with a cold snort, "Kid, you came here 20 years earlier than me." Lucian burst into laughter. As the first person who had the courage to go through the transport array and come to this unknown planet, he had the right to be proud. "Sir Chairman, I'll go with you." Lucian said this while leading Sui to another transport array. "What's the latest feedback from the front line?" Sui asked. The expression on Lucian's face immediately became solemn. The latest report received yesterday showed that signs of life were indeed found on planet B339, and the exploration team also saw the existence of large creatures with their own eyes. The reason why Sui insisted on going through the transport array to go to planet B339, which New Flyer discovered at the beginning of this year, despite the opposition of a large group of people, was because the frontline exploration team found traces of life on this planet. Now that he heard Lucian say that they had found the existence of large creatures, Sui immediately became excited. The transport arrays in New Flyer's possession that could travel through space were actually left behind by the abyssal demons from 10,000 years ago. The so-called exploration was just tracking through the transport arrays one by one. Since it was like this, being able to find the existence of life on planet B339 meant that the abyssal demons were most likely on this planet. This also meant that they had finally found the abyssal demons. But New Flyer had already discovered planet B339 for 4 months, but there were still no movements from the abyssal demons. This made Sui feel a bit strange. Properly speaking, these transport arrays were left behind by the abyssal demons, so they should have noticed something strange. Large creature? What kind of large creature is it? There's a blurry effect in front. Look. Lucian took out a picture for Sui. Sui couldn't help being stunned when he saw it. The creature on the picture had no reference, so he couldn't see its body, but it had a long head and a long tail, as well as 2 fins on both sides. It looked like a shark. There were no sharks on the Signs planet, so this was definitely a strange creature. But seeing this strangely familiar shape, Sui's expression couldn't help becoming a bit strange. "What is it?" Lucian saw the strange expression on Sui's face and couldn't help asking this. "Nothing." Sui shook his head and stood in the transport array to the next planet with Lucian. After repeating the same process 20 times, Sui and Lucian appeared in another transport array, but the surrounding space suddenly became oppressive. Sui looked up and found that under the light of the transport array base, there were waves of water around them. It seemed like they were currently in the deep sea. "Chairman Sui, you're here." The first one to greet him was Elder Lysania. When she found out that there were signs of life on planet B339, she rushed over as soon as possible. She had been here for more than 2 months. With the help of the life magic behind her, the New Flyer researchers gained a bit more understanding of the local creatures. Sui looked up and asked, "Based on this, we should be at the bottom of the sea right now." Elder Lysania shook her head. "We can't be 100% sure yet. Although according to the analysis, the structure of the water above us is the same as the water of the endless sea, this is an unknown planet, so we can't be sure." Sui nodded in agreement. When exploring the stars, one couldn't be too careful. "Chairman Sui, you came right on time. I just translated these words. You could take a look." Elder Lysania said. "Words?" Sui was stunned as he took the piece of paper from Elder Lysania. "It's the words we found on a stone slab after we came here." Elder Lysania said that these words were very similar to the words used by the demons of the abyss 10,000 years ago, so we tried to translate it. The New Flyer staff member on the side explained. "The words of the demons of the abyss." Sui was shocked and quickly read it seriously. However, after reading for a while, Sui's expression became very strange. The first half of the words was nothing special, but the demons of the abyss described how they had spent decades of adventure and exploration before finally finding a planet with an environment similar to their hometown that was suitable for living. They had experienced all kinds of hardships and dangers in the process, and now that they had finally arrived here, they felt very happy. These things were naturally normal, but when Sui read the last paragraph, he felt that it was very abnormal. "We don't know if we can return to our hometown, But for people like us who are equivalent to self-exiles, since we are here, we should let go of everything and start a new life. Therefore, we also need a new name. After a few elders discussed it, in order to commemorate our hometown, we called our race Atlantis. The words left by the demons of the abyss were obviously not these, and the words translated by Elder Lysania were also not like this, but the last few words were the standard Atlantis. Chairman Su, what's wrong with you? Elder Lysania asked curiously when she saw Su Yi's strange expression. Could it be that you see something from this? Su Yi turned to look at Elder Lysania. You haven't gone up to take a look after coming here? Go up? Go up where? Elder Lysania asked curiously. It's up here. Su Yi raised his head and pointed up, glancing at the various familiar creatures swimming in the water from time to time. He took a deep breath and suddenly cast a magic shield on himself. The next moment, he disappeared from the teleportation array. About 2 minutes later, Su Yi rushed out of the water with a splash, and then quickly rose into the air with the help of the teleportation array. Soon, he had penetrated the atmosphere above his head and arrived in space again. When he came to a suitable location, he stopped and turned around to look. A huge blue planet came into view. Looking at the extremely familiar planet in front of him, which he had dreamed of many times decades ago, Su Yi smiled bitterly. Are you playing with me? The next moment, his body suddenly fell and landed on a piece of land on the planet below. This piece of land was coastal to the east, and there were 2 islands at the bottom right corner and below, as if some creature had grown 2 feet. Su Yi landed on the rounder foot at the bottom. A moment later, he appeared on a beach out of thin air. There were many people sunbathing on the beach, and it was extremely lively with the sea breeze blowing. Su Yi landed behind a tree and didn't attract anyone's attention. He looked left and right, then rushed out from behind the tree. He grabbed a passerby and asked, Tell me, what year is it now? It was Mandarin that Su Yi had not spoken for decades, and he was not very proficient in it. The man stared at Su Yi inexplicably and reprimanded him in Mandarin with a slight accent. You're crazy. Then he turned around and left. Su Yi was in a daze for a while and walked blankly to a small shop on the beach. It just so happened that a small TV in the shop was broadcasting the news. Su Yi glanced at the familiar characters on the TV and then at the clear 2016 on the calendar next to the TV. He suddenly laughed. Well, it turns out that not only did I travel through space, but I also traveled through time. Then now, I've finally returned to my hometown that I've been away from for more than 70 years. What should I do? Chapter 1264. After writing the words, the book is finished, he didn't feel as relaxed as many authors would describe. Instead, he felt a sense of relief, but more than that, he felt a sense of loss and inexplicable melancholy. Finished writing? He finished writing. I'm not a newbie, and this book is far from my first book. However, it's the first book I've written that has more than 4 million words. Before this, the longest I've written was only 7 million words. I actually managed to cross such a huge gap. And what supported this leap wasn't the book's results, because its results couldn't be considered good, but rather faith. There's no need to deliberately hide it. I used to write a few books under other pen names, but it was always difficult to persevere. At most, I could write more than 1 million words. But before I started writing this book, I told myself that I had to persevere and finish it properly. I couldn't just stop updating, and I definitely couldn't do anything stupid. I did it. Although the ending wasn't perfect, and it might even be criticized as a lousy ending, at least the story was written according to my original outline. Actually, there was no point in writing the last part of the story. As for the main character's return to Earth and the collision between the magical and scientific civilizations, that was another story that didn't belong in this book. So for this book, I can still write the words the end of the book without shame. If I write badly, it's because I don't have enough control and pen strength. I'll improve on this aspect in the future. Speaking of the future, he also had to announce his new book. Now that it was the new year, there were a lot of things to do, so it was impossible for him to get back to work right away. According to the plan, the new book will be uploaded at the beginning of March. I hope everyone can continue to support me at that time. Also, since we're talking about Chinese New Year, I'd like to congratulate everyone on a happy Chinese New Year and wish you all the best. Red envelopes, cough cough. I'm so excited to see all the rewards after the event. Okay, I've been naggy for so long. See you at the new book. Chapter 1265. Originally, Suzhua was just a cameraman in Jiangnan Province TV station. He thought that he would spend the rest of his life in the provincial TV station, living a mediocre life, just waiting to die. Until one day, he kowtowed and picked up Investiture of the Gods. Hey, I just kowtowed to the Jade Emperor. Why did I suddenly become the second-generation leader of Jiangxia? Investiture of the Gods? Not only do I have to look for the gods in the heavenly court who are scattered everywhere in the city, but I also have to look for them in places far away and even in different planes. Through the investiture of the gods' missions, Suzhua gradually learned that the heavenly court in the myths and legends was completely different from what he remembered. For example, Yulao not only gave people red strings, but also green strings. For example, Chang, Yi, and Canopy Marshall were in love with each other. For example, the seven fairies were not the daughters of the Jade Emperor and the Queen Mother. For example, the Jade Emperor was not that useless after all. He had completed 2 high-quality books, Optical Brain Wu Supreme and Magic Industry Empire. The old authors guarantee the quality of the books, and the updates are great. Please support me. Originally, Suzhua was just a cameraman in Jiangnan Province TV station. He thought that he would spend the rest of his life in the provincial TV station, living a mediocre life, just waiting to die. Until one day, he kowtowed and picked up Investiture of the Gods. Hey, I just kowtowed to the Jade Emperor. Why did I suddenly become the second-generation leader of Jiangxia? Investiture of the Gods? Not only do I have to look for the gods in the heavenly court who are scattered everywhere in the city, but I also have to look for them in places far away and even in different planes. Through the investiture of the gods' missions, Suzhua gradually learned that the heavenly court in the myths and legends was completely different from what he remembered. For example, Yulao not only gave people red strings, but also green strings. For example, Chang, Yi, and Canopy Marshall were in love with each other. For example, the seven fairies were not the daughters of the Jade Emperor and the Queen Mother. For example, the Jade Emperor was not that useless after all. I've finished Quantum Brain Wu Zun and Magic Industry Empire, 2 excellent books. The old author guarantees the quality of the books, and the updates are awesome. I ask for the support of all readers. Originally, Suzhua was just a cameraman in Jiangnan Province TV station. He thought that he would spend the rest of his life in the provincial TV station, living a mediocre life, just waiting for death in the provincial TV station. Until one day, he kowtowed and picked up the Investiture of the Gods. Hey, didn't I just kowtow to the Jade Emperor? Why did I suddenly become the second-generation head of Jiangxia? You want me to become a god? Not only did he have to search for the gods of the heavenly court who were scattered all over the city, but he also had to go to places further away, or even places in different planes to search for them. Through the God Investiture missions, Suzhua gradually learned that the heavenly court in the myths and legends was completely different from what he had imagined. For example, Yulao not only gave people red strings, but also green strings. For example, Chang, Yi, and Canopy Marshall were in love with each other. For example, the seven fairies were not the Jade Emperor and the Queen Mother's daughters. For example, the Jade Emperor was not that useless after all. I've finished Quantum Brain Wu Zun and Magic Industry Empire, 2 excellent books. The old author guarantees the quality of the books, and the updates are awesome. I ask for the support of all readers. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.